Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Insight. Today we're going to be analyzing some recent happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country within the context of the more than 4-year-long armed conflict going on there. 4 soldiers and a civilian, the Momo regional delegate of communication, killed in an ambush not far from Bengui in the northwest region. 3 other persons wounded, enormous material damage recorded. The convoy of the senior divisional officer of the Momo division was attacked on the night of January 5th to 6th, 2021, while the prefect and other authorities were returning from the installation ceremony of the divisional officers of Njikwa and Andek. And about 48 hours after that incident, at least 4 elements of the National Armed Forces and 2 civilians were killed around the Matazam checkpoint in Santa Nizam division of the northwest region of the country. And this incident came following a night of gun battles in some parts of the town of Bamenda. And in the southwest region, a locally made explosive device was discovered by security and defense forces in Kumba. We'll also take a look at the post-election protests and violence in the United States of America. Our guest today, Barrister ANENEBA Innocent Akufo, a Cameroonian attorney and counselor at law in New York, human rights defender and major proponent of decolonization. Thank you for joining us today, Barrister.
It was a pleasure, Mr. Babila. I'm getting on Equinoxe.
What's your take about the recent happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country? First, the attack on the convoy of the senior divisional officer of the Momo division in the northwest region. And in that attack, as you already know, 5 persons died: a civilian, a journalist, regional delegate of communication for the Momo division, and 4 soldiers.
Yes, Mr. Babila, it's unfortunate, and our condolences, or my personal condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. And again, if society has gotten to a point where violence has become a catharsis, this is what you expect of people. We do, and I do personally condemn violence on both sides. Whether it's from the government or it's from people who are asserting their right in a society that they feel they belong into. So what happened when they went to install the officers in this region of the country, it's not something that was unexpected. This is things that happen because there is a genesis of something that has not been addressed yet. You know, rather than fixing what we're supposed to fix, we try to trench on what, we think it's better for us. Aristotle and Cicero said this is a hubris that we may never get by if we continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. So again, death is death. We don't want to lose human life because of power. And this is the excesses of power that we're seeing, whether it's in Cameroon, whether it's in other African countries, whether it's in the United States or where in the world. This is where the aristocracy, the oligarchs, feel that they've gotten all their grips in power, and they don't look at those people who are downtrodden, and they feel that they have a grip on what they can manifest as their portion of power. This is what happened. And this pornographic display of force by the government or by whoever is carrying guns in Cameroon or in the southern Cameroons, it's something that we have to look at the root cause. We cannot be putting our safety, we cannot be putting Band-Aid on something that is so egregious. We cannot move from nowhere to nowhere, or from nowhere expecting that we're going to somewhere. If the basis is faulty, then of course, the fabric itself has to be dissolved. And how do you dissolve this? You go through a process. At some point, we Africans, we Cameroonians, you have to sit down and look in retrospect. What have we done wrong? We cannot keep digging because we have power and we feel that we would end up with the right solution. They would never be the same. We fail.
Yes, sir. Looking at the intensity of this other attack, the magnitude of this other attack, an armored car almost shattered into pieces, and so on. What can we read within the lines of this other incident that has taken away human lives in the northwest and southwest regions of the country in crisis for more than 4 years today?
And when we were growing up, this is not the type of violence that we saw. It has been espoused. This violence has been brought on the people by the regime. And what's the natural reaction when you get attacked? The only thing is you try to defend yourself. We can lay blame on both sides on this equation, but in the end, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, who is benefiting from all this violence in Cameroon? Who is the progenitor? Who is actually orchestrating all this stuff? These guns are not made in Bamenda. These guns are not made in Douala. These guns are not made in Yaoundé or wherever. You know, these guns have been imported from the West or whichever part of the world to kill you Africans. I don't know when we will see this and realize that we are beating the white man's war in all this stuff, because you are fueling full employment outside of Cameroon by buying these guns from Western countries, and they will be happy to sell you these guns. And how do these guns get into you, to you guys? Because you sign exorbitant contracts with them that they will protect you by getting your resources. And they bring these guns, and you are championing, thinking that you're trying to champion a cause for the country. You are not. You are working for the white man. That is exactly what you're doing. This is another level of slavery that we've gotten ourselves into. And until the average Cameroonian sees the difference between this and the original form of slavery, the guns, the ammunition will flow. People will become very, very creative, make their own type of devices, whether it is the government or the people who are asserting their rights of freedom in a society that they feel they belong to, which is their society. These things will always continue until we find a perfect solution. We have to build a land that we leave behind for our children to look into and say, this is what my forebears did for us. We cannot be having this pro-West mentality, trying to keep, colonialism at bay in Cameroon and think that you would succeed. If you look at the power structure in Cameroon, if I might delve into that, if you look at the power structure in Cameroon, they are all people from the 60s. And when I mean 60s, not that they were born in the 60s. These were people who graduated or did stuff in the 60s that they've moved this. The French keep them there and the West keep these people there just because they want to maintain that colonial mentality. And until we see past that, until we go past that, we will be where we are today. The war that's been going on for 4 years will go for longer than that. And this is not something that we wish as a people, because you are killing your brothers and sisters because the white man is telling you to do that. Until you see that, until we get past that mentality in our mind, we'll keep doing the same thing, and more ammunition will flow. People will become more creative. Devices will be created, because that's just the human mind. Because if Emile Durkheim, a French sociologist, looked at the pathology of the human body and reflected that on society, and saw that the way the body works, it's exactly how society has to work, and came up with the theory of anomie, which means, society get into that catharsis where it becomes so complex, so convoluted, and leaders are no longer accountable to the people. And at some point, society devolves and people might be committing suicide because the society that they hope for is no longer able to assist them overcome their problems. And this is exactly what we are seeing in Cameroon.
These incidents are coming after the putting in place of regional executives within the context of the implementation of the new decentralization code, with the special status for the northwest and southwest regions of the country. The regional assembly and the house of chiefs are progressively being put in place in those two regions. At the same time, these incidents are occurring. What are the signals that can be read within the context of these incidents happening? Is it does that mean that what government is doing so far is not appeasing the people, is not bringing down the tension, is not solving the problem?
It is not, Mr. Babila. Exactly, the government of Cameroon is doing the opposite. The government of Cameroon is trying to maintain the status quo. Because at one point I had asked you guys, who gave somebody the right to give some other person a special status when we were co-equal partners in a union that has never actually worked? You cannot be poking your hand or your finger into somebody's eye and feel that you will blind that eye and that eye will never see, or the other eye will stay, you know, aloof and never react. This is exactly what's going on. You cannot say that there is a special status. You're doing a regional, you know, decentralization of your government when the central power, the central authority of that government, it is still in Yaoundé. Look, this is, if you look at that law they call OHADA, this is an extension of French influence in Africa. You know, if you look at the House of Chiefs that they're trying to create, or whatever they're trying to create, to be candid, I've not had the time to read the recent decentralization laws because, you know, I know exactly what the mentality would be when these people try to craft their law. They take from the French and try to push it onto the people. Because in the eastern part of Cameroon, the East Cameroon, the former, you know, the French-speaking Cameroon, their chiefs and all those people, they were part of the administration. That's not how the chiefs were in the West Cameroon. You know, they might have, you know, they might have had, you know, some vestiges of administration in their strain of or line of thought. But again, these were not people, these were people that were answerable to their ancestry and their people, not to the white, not to the colonialists. And at this point where they've brought the House of, you know, decentralized and brought the House of Chiefs and all that stuff, you know, we are pandering to French legal system because they wrote the laws in like the OHADA. That's something that the Frenchman crafted in their parliament and gave you guys as an economic legal system that you should inculcate into your own legal system. It wasn't voted in your parliament. Why would you do that? I mean, more than 60 years after independence, you still depend on the Frenchman. It's horrible. It is something that we should not accept. We have smart Cameroonians, we have smart Africans who can sit at the table and design laws that fit our reality, not the Frenchman's reality, not the American's reality, and not the European reality. Something that reflects our, you know, our upbringing and how we are, who as a people. As if we don't get past that, if we never go past that, we will still be doing exactly what we are doing. And all this stuff about decentralization, for me, it's a hogwash. It is just because power is still in Yaoundé. It is still the same people that are doing the same stuff because, you know, there is no devolution here. So if, you know, again,
but it's talking about who gave the right to who to give a special status to the other. This is something that is enshrined in the constitution of the country, and is that constitution that is being implemented today.
Well, again, laws, you know, we always say that the history of a country is written by somebody who is victorious always write the history of the country. It doesn't necessarily mean that that history is correct. Because if you're looking at the Constitution, who writes the Constitution? If you look at, there was an original Constitution in 1961. Look at that Constitution, what did it say? After that, you've got different versions of the Constitution until what we have today. At some point, we had something that could be reflective of this country, but they decided not to implement that Constitution. If you ask me why, I would not tell you because I wasn't part of the process. They would say, it's, again, the laws are written by man. The current Constitution, that absolutely stamps any little vestige of freedom on the people. Everything you do, if you want to manifest your right, your inalienable right as a Cameroonian, or somebody from the southern Cameroons, what they would do is they would take you and charge you for terrorism. Those are not laws that you write for people. Those are laws that, you know, you write for a society that's in decay. Because you try to cling to power, you do everything within your hubris to keep yourself in power by writing all those types of laws. So for me, the Constitution that you say gave them the power to do what they're doing, for me it is, you know, it was written by whom? By the same people who are trying to oppress you, who are actually oppressing you. So you cannot tell me that there is a constitution in Cameroon. The constitution is a document, it's a living document, that is true. But a constitution that gives absolute power to a monarch, the president of the country, that is not constitution. Because that document is supposed to belong to the people and not to one person. Because everything that you do on in that constitution, the president of Cameroon, Mr. Paul Biya, if he might just get up one day and issue a presidential decree which overrides the entire constitution. Is that a constitution? That is not a constitution. So you cannot, on the basis of that document, which is faulty, it is something called the tree of, the fruit of the poisonous tree in legal parlance. So if the root is faulty, then every fruit that comes out of that tree itself is faulty. So the constitution is coming, it's a root from the poisonous tree. You should just forget about it.
Looking at what's been happening and what government has been doing, what is your opinion about the future, the coming months, the coming years, the northwest and southwest regions of the country with regards to what government is doing so far to bring down the tensions, to put an end to the atrocities being committed in those two regions, and the happenings which are in sharp contrast to what government is aiming at, the objectives of government, that is peace, restoring peace and normalcy, but that peace is not forthcoming because of the incidents that continue to happen, the killings, the destruction of properties, explosives here and there, soldiers and civilians going down.
Our problems are despair and desperation in Cameroon and most African countries, as I can say. Saying that, what's the solution to these problems? You see, I listened to somebody say that, this thing is relative. We've come to a point of normalcy, relative from where we were 4 years ago, when you could not even stick your nose out of the out of your house. It's relative. Now we can, with armored cars, with guides from gendarmes and police officers, you can walk from point A to point B. For me, that is not relative. That is not normalcy. That's chaos. That's anomie, as Emile Durkheim said. And another French guy, André Gide, when he traveled to Africa and came back to France and wrote Voyage au Congo, in his book said, when the average person is downtrodden and oppressed, at some point in that society, the oppressed will rise up, and in the latent fertility of that fallow class, and there will be no way to hold them down. So that the solution to all our problems in Africa, and in Cameroon in particular, because I know the country, is you have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right people in power. Some people should not feel that they are entitled. They are the ones who are supposed to be the rulers of Cameroon. No, they are not. Whether you come from a particular tribe, this is not a tribal warfare that we're getting into. This is society as an organ. It's an organic structure, and everybody has to participate in that society. So if you bring a particular tribe to be the ones that write the laws and do everything of that particular country, it will always reflect their own dispensation about society. That's what it's going to be. Because again, as I said, this is a colonial mentality. These people are there to serve the colonial interest. And as long as that particular mentality is enshrouded within themselves, they are not getting out of this. Because the 4 years will just keep on going. And as I said, people get perfect. They get themselves perfected with time. When the war was declared on the other part of the country, they were coming out with knives and then guns. But today you see explosives flying out there. It's not something we support. It is not something that we should conjure or tolerate in our society. We want peace. Peace should flow, but speak to the right people. Even if it means going back to Kondenge prison, where you have all the detainees, all those people for basically exercising a basic human right. Go out there, get those people and say, okay, this is a symbolic gesture. Let's sit down and talk, find a solution to this problem. I'm telling you, you cannot sit on the mountaintop of your desires and just sit down there and feel that everybody should listen to you. No, go to those people. They are part of your society. These people, they are not enemies. They are not foreigners. They are part of that system, that structure. So you have to involve the right people, the right people with the right mentality, and be able to accept that, somebody else's perspective, it's something positive for that society. Because as long as you keep revolving around the same people, because if you look at Mr. Biya's cabinet, these are people, none of them is under 60, and these are people that have stayed with him for the longest time. What do you expect of those people? They will keep doing the same thing. Professor Joseph Owona, Mr. Maurice Kamto, Professor Kamto, these are the same people. They will keep writing the same laws. You give them the opportunity to do one thing. The first place they go to France. Why do they go to consult with the Frenchman? The Frenchman is not part of Cameroon. Their time is come and gone. Until we see that part and go beyond that part, we will still doing the same thing.
All right, Barrister, we're going to talk about what France can do in the light of the recent statements from the United States Congress accusing France of doing nothing to solve the problems in Cameroon. But that will be after the press review by Immaculate Fogwe. She takes us to the newsstands.
The Sun reports deadly attack on Momo Senior Divisional Officers Convoy, communication delegate for Momo, and 5 military officers killed. The Horizon exclaims Anglophone crisis flares up, 5 killed in Northwest region. The Guardian Post Anglophone crisis, United States Congress accuses France of double standards. Another edition of the Guardian Post exclaims, despite much trumpeted decentralization, government confirms governor's grip on elected regional executives. Cameroon Insider reports, end of year address to the nation. President Paul Biya hails democratic progress. The Post equally exclaims, patients stranded as Northwest Hemodialysis Center machines break down. The Voice, COVID-19 veils New Year wishes presentation ceremonies. The Chronicle Times, Dian Gute is 2 years and still counting as Prime Minister. The Guardian Post, Pope Francis appoints Michael Bibi, Bishop of Buea.
Thanks, Immaculate Fogwe, for the press review. Barrister ANENEBA Akufo, the U.S. Congress is accusing France of doing nothing to solve the crisis, but simply staying back and enjoying its economic and military cooperation with Cameroon. What do you think about this?
You see, again, like when some time ago when Mr. Thibault Nagy, the Undersecretary for African Affairs, I hope that's the right title I'm calling, said something about, the conflict between the Cameroon government and those people asserting an inalienable right. They call them secessionists, they call them all type of names, but that's not a name, that's not an attribution I'll give them. He said you can never use war to win this fight. You have to talk to the people and find a solution to this problem. So if the U.S. government, if the House of Senate, the most sacred place where laws emanate from the United States, if they can sit down and deliberate and accuse the Frenchman of doing, of bidding, of creating, of foiling this war in the Cameroons, then they are absolutely correct. If you listen, I think about a year ago, a French prime minister, or he was a candidate for the for the Italian, to be the Italian prime minister. I think I've forgotten his name. He actually accused France directly. The refugees coming from across the Sahara, coming into Italy and all that stuff, he laid that blame directly onto the French because it is their policies. You cannot come to a country, you are the executor, you are the legislator, and you are the judiciary. No, you cannot do that. You cannot do that, Frenchman, because you have created this havoc in Cameroon. And of course, we cannot just blame the Frenchman, you blame the people at the top of power, because look, when Mr. Biya came to power, he changed the CNU to Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. Why did he change it to that? Because there was something in the close to the 40s that was called the Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Africain. That was a French appellation. So what he did to cower to the Frenchman by changing the CNU and making it the Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. So to buy the French, say, okay, look, I am here, I am bidding you, I will be here for you, come and take whatever you do. So when they write all those cooperation agreements filled with military contracts, you know, and all that stuff, that they will protect you in case there is a war or whatever, like what happened in Ivory Coast. That's exactly what we have to go past that mentality. And until we get past that point, there is no way. So if the US government is telling the Frenchman that this is what they're doing, because they've seen French policy in Africa, there has never been decolonization in Africa. There has been recolonization in another form. They do everything. If you stick your head out there, they'll find every way to bring you down and kill you and eliminate you. And until the average man in Africa sees the Frenchman not as a partner, but as a competitor, they're coming to compete for your resources. If you get it at that point, then you say, okay, no, he has to be the best bidder, not coming to give you arms and all that stuff, and you take it and sit down and fuel the pockets of a few people and feel that this is how Cameroon will move. It will never go beyond that particular point.
But Barrister, some nationalists and Pan-Africanists are asking the question, for how long shall we continue pointing fingers at foreigners, pointing fingers at France and other countries for the things that are happening in the African countries, things happening in Cameroon, and we are pointing fingers at France and so on?
No, that's exactly what I just told you. I said, look, we cannot all blame this thing on France. At the top, it has to come from the top. As I said, when the president of Cameroon was met the president of Cameroon, what did he do? He changed the CNU, the Cameroon National Union, which was the original party, to Rassemblement Démocratique du Peuple Cameroun. Why would he change it? Why not bring something that's reflective of your country? He made it so that to cower to the French. And all those top ministers, all those top people around him, they were all educated. Most of them were educated in France. And they are only there to put in French mentality in that system. They're promoting neo-colonization. See, if you give me the opportunity to change the minds of people in Cameroon, let me tell you the one institution that, or one or two that I will scrap right away, and now will go away. The École Nationale d'Administration et Magistration. That is a perfect symbol of colonization. You take away that institution, you take away French power in Cameroon. That's a solution right there. You take away the gendarmerie, you take away French power in Cameroon. You inculcate the gendarmerie either into the military or into the police force. You take away that school of magistracy. That is an iconic symbol of colonization in Cameroon, in particular.
But
so if you're asking,
but these are
yes,
national institutions. How are they?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. National institutions. I'm sorry.
Yes, I said these are national institutions. How are they representatives of the colonial power?
No, because the curriculum right there is being tailored towards the, maintaining that influence there. Let me tell you, I don't know if we have time for this, but let me tell you, when I graduated from the University of Cameroon, Yaoundé, Cameroon, and I passed, again, if I had cowered to the Frenchman, I would have been a minister somewhere in Cameroon today. But let me tell you, when I passed the exams, and I went for the interview, the orals, I went there and sat. The jury was made of, I think, about 7 or 8 black people, and there was one white person in there in the middle, and he was a Frenchman. And the first question he asked me, and that was the only question he asked me in French, he asked me, according to you, what do you understand by Bretton Woods? He asked me in French, and I asked him if I could answer this question in English, and he said yes. And I told him what Bretton Woods was. And of course, Bretton Woods is after the Second World War, where they met in the United States in Massachusetts. That's where the IMF came up. That's where the African Development Bank, and that's how France-Afrique crept up, because they wanted to maintain their colonies and say, okay, this is civilization. They want to civilize these people. So they write this pact, this contract with you people that are not civilized, and that is the basis. That is where it is. So if you're telling me that that institution is a nationalist institution, then that is not correct. It is not proper. It is a vestige of colonialism. Take away that institution, we will get better schools. We can have better law schools. We can have better law schools when we graduate from the university. We can have better institutions, but not because the curriculum right there is tailored. Again, when I did not answer that question, that's how I failed to go to ANENEBA. That's how I feel. I never regretted my solution, my decision right there. I never regretted it because I did not cower to the white man. Because he was the only person. When I was done after that oral, I asked if there was any other question. He said no, because he knew I wasn't for him. So until that mindset, we have to change. We have to change. The Frenchman cannot kill every African. We have to stand our ground and say, no, we have to move from point A to point B. We cannot dance on the same spot and expect a difference, that there will be a change.
Let's talk about what is happening in the United States of America, where you are. Post-election violence and protests coming from the camp of outgoing President Donald Trump. What can we pull out of what is happening there in the United States?
They've done it exactly the way we do it back in Africa and some other countries. You know, and United States, it's a representative democracy. So you get voted to represent the people and not yourself and not your interest. But the difference in this particular situation is that the current leader of the White House thought, you know, once you accede to power, everything is under you. You can use it the way you want, but that's not how American democracy is. Because if it is what it is, or what he thought it was, like the other day on the 6th of January, when those, call them anarchists or how you want to call them, ascended on the Capitol and attacked that legislative body, it would have been different. You know, they would have been, because they were armed, it would have been different. But a couple of hours after that, that body came back again into full session, and the president has made a mea culpa, something like that. But I don't think this is something that we can learn, because what we are learning from the current president, we are learning the bad thing, because that's not how democracy works.
That's the same United States that has imposed itself as a teacher of democracy to other countries around the world, notably African countries. And when we have this happening at this point in time, what can we pick out of that?
That is true. Again, this is like, you know, it's never been like this before. I think the last time the Capitol was stormed the way it was done today, or somebody denies to give up power when he's been defeated at the ballot box, it's hundreds of years ago. So Mr. Trump, President Trump, he is one of a kind. I think this is one of a generation, and history will always quote him for what he's done. This is not representative of American democracy that we've grown to know. You know, there's always been a peaceful transition of power. If you lose, you go to the courts. The legal system is there, it will protect you, they will give you, and there is a final verdict. When the Supreme Court or the courts make that decision, you know, you are supposed to accept it, because the judges are impartial. That's how they're supposed to function, and that's how we've believed in them in this society. So we cannot really, if we learn something from what happened in the United States, we should know that if you try to assert yourself in power, the institutions, if they are supposed to work and they work properly, they would not let you do what happened. But if you look at, let me draw that parallel to Cameroon, the last elections that happened. Well, the Professor Maurice Kamto and his party, they said they won the election. But what happened? They went to the courts. But what happens in the courts? The Chief Justice, I don't know if that's his right title in Cameroon, the Chief Justice in that particular setting, in that judicial setting, in that judicial council, you know, he was, the way he applied the law, you realize that it was so one-sided. He took it was just a pure show. You know, it was a pure show. You put people right there, they bring everybody assert their points of view, and in the end, you know, you still decide for the person who put you there. But you realize in the Supreme Court, they threw away cases that came to that court in the United States here, and these were judges that were appointed by President Trump. You know, if it was in Cameroon, you would say, okay, no, the president appointed me, he's been, you know, he gave me this lifetime appointment, let me do it, let me do this for him, and you change it. No, the Supreme Court, the justices here in the United States, all 9 of them, they threw out the cases because there was no justification for that case to even get there, because the states had already trashed everything. So if we can learn something from this system, learn from the get-go that the Supreme Court intervened. They did not give power back to the president, because if they had taken on that case and even decided one of them for Mr. Trump, it would have been something different. So we have to build institutions. We should not build people. That's what we have to look on this as Cameroonians. You should not have the judicial system in Cameroon. Let me tell you, if you go to Cameroon, if you go to court and your client is granted bail, you go to the gendarmerie or the police station to take that person out. They will not let him out, because it is a military system that's running that country right now. It is not a pure democracy in Cameroon. That's what happens.
Barrister ANENEBA Innocent Akufo, Cameroonian attorney and counselor at law in New York, human rights defender and major proponent of decolonization. We're going to end here, and you asked the question, who is orchestrating the happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country? We'll try to answer that question in the second part of this program, when we receive PADDY ASANGA, who will be joining us from Germany. Thank you very much, Barrister, for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Babila, and all the best, and Happy New Year to Equinoxe and your staff.
Thank you. Same to you. We are receiving our second guest in this edition of The Insight. PADDY ASANGA, civil society activist, is joining us from Hamburg, Germany. PADDY, you're welcome.
Yes, Babila, good evening, and I want to wish all of you, first of all, a very, very happy and prosperous and hopeful new year, even though the news that we are getting back home is not very, very pleasant. But you know, when somebody is alive, there is hope, and you are still alive, doing the good job that you have been trained to do as a journalist. Thank you for bringing me on The Insight, Babila.
PADDY ASANGA, you have your ears and your eyes on the ground back home, monitoring happenings in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. What information do you have about the recent happenings, notably the attack on the convoy of the senior division officer of the Momo division in the northwest region, an attack which left 5 persons dead, 4 soldiers and a civilian?
Yes, Babila, it's a very, very sad situation. I don't celebrate the death of a military personnel, police officer, or anybody in the armed forces. Neither do I also celebrate the death of Amber boys. They are all Cameroonians, and we regret, because the force of every nation is its population and its working force. But you want to understand that we have gotten into a situation where people are struggling to position themselves, because come what may, Mr. Biya would not be there by virtue of nature and his age. Mr. Babila, you know, Ambazonians sent some boys to go to Pakistan and be trained how to make explosive. And when they came back, I don't know if the government people, they had this information, but that is the result of what they say they were going to plant popcorns and all sorts of things. So it is because we have a government that is not listening, and they think that they know it all. These guys, when they came back from Pakistan, that is what they planned to do, and they said they were going to disrupt regional elections, they were going to plant bombs, and they were no more going to be fighting with arms, because the capacity is not there, and you know that the funding is not coming. But to produce these bombs is very, very cheap, and the intelligence that we have as far as these issues of what happened in Momo is concerned, it's that one of our sister, who is a journalist, was attacked also in that convoy, and she lost her life, which is a very regrettable thing. And all the blame goes on the Jacobini system in Yaoundé. We regret it, and we want to let the government understand that we are not going to sit and watch them do. It is time for them to take their responsibility, because they pretend to want to protect our people, and we don't know why it is happening now that all this information that are being leaked out, they did not do anything in that light to protect lives and preserve life, Babila. So it's a very sad situation. We know where it is coming from. You know, first of all, some days ahead, you had situations where these guys were just experimenting, but those who came back from Pakistan, who were sent to Pakistan by Ayabacho and his group, they are the one responsible for what you are seeing happening to our brothers and sisters, be it the military, civilians, or Amber boys.
Now you're attributing those incidents to the pro-independence fighters, but at the same time, you're blaming the Yaoundé administration. Why?
You know, the Yaoundé administration fabricated Ambazonia because we already knew from time immemorial that there were some Anglophones who were agitating and were always they have always had this idea of picking up weapons and fighting the government. But I will blame the government because when you are in government, you have to predict and you anticipate what is going to happen. But you don't just sit there and when things happen, you start reacting. It doesn't work like that. No government functions like that. Governments have projections they project in about 50, 30, 25 years. The Cameroon government is always reacting. It's always late in the way it does its own things. So I'm not going to vindicate, vilify the Ambazonians and vindicate the Cameroon government. It doesn't work that way. You know, I am one of those people who has always stood for the truth, and nothing is going to deter me from telling the truth.
PADDY ASANGA, you said that government fabricated the pro-independence fighters. How? Who did that in government and how?
Listen, Mr. Babila, when I say the government fabricated the pro-independent fighters, can you remember people who came on air, Anglophone intellectuals, ministers in government, and said there was no Anglophone problems? Can you imagine what that did to the mentality of people like myself? Babila, I was one of those people who galvanized and was marching on the streets of major European cities, protesting that all those people who were arrested, like Bala, Fontem, Ayapol, and Mancho BBC, Ngalim, and all those of the Coffin Revolution, the consortium, should be released. And what did the government do? Instead of releasing them, the government did some kind of it did what they know how to do best. They chose the people they wanted to release and let some of them in jail, and that radicalized the Ambazonians, or radicalized people, and created what you see today is Ambazonians. So it is the responsibility of the government, because they did not do what every government does. We have a secessionist movements all over the world, and this secessionist movement or separatist movement all over the world, they serve as pressure groups, and it is like holding the government to accountable and always telling them that there are some group of people who think that the way they are being treated, they don't belong to the union. And it is in Canada, it is in Nigeria, it is in America, in here in Germany, it also exists. When you go to Ghana, you go to Corsica in France, you go to Spain, you have the Basque and all sorts of independentist movement or separatist movement. So, but the case of Cameroon is very peculiar because we have a government that is inept, that doesn't anticipate, they only react. And when you are a reactive government and not an anticipatory government, this is what you get. So the government is responsible for what is going on.
The government is responsible for what is going on, and the government on its part saying that the pro-independence fighters and some of the people who are in the United States and elsewhere around the world are responsible for the atrocities that have been committed in those two regions, and that concerning that the head of state indicated that concerning the Kumba massacre, for example, all those found guilty would be brought to book, would be punished according to the law.
Yes, Babila, you know, disorder is always collective. but there are individual responsibility. Mr. Biya is the accountant of the situation that is happening in Cameroon, but it doesn't permit PADDY ASANGA to go and create a gang, break prisons, take guys out of the prisons, give them arms, and start calling chiefs, asking those chiefs to be beheaded or to go and attack schools or give injunctions to boys who have escaped from the prisons break to go and be chopping the limbs and fingers of school children. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You want to remember that when this thing all started, all of us, and even majority of the international community were decrying the fact that the military and the armed forces acted high-handedly. And even when Bala, Fontaine, Ayapol, Tassang were on the run, we were all together until some people decided that, took the laws into their hands, and they decided to give other people's name who did not agree with their methodology. They started by castigating Monzo, they started by vilifying Cardinal Tumi, vilifying the chairman, vilifying Kawala, calling them enablers, whereas these are opinions who have stood their grounds, and they have been putting pressure on the government. So disorder is collective, but then responsibility is also individual. So if Mr. Biya is going down for what he has done and his regime has done to the Cameroonian people, there are also people like us here, some of us sitting in the diaspora, who should be held responsible. I think that that would be something great if the military who are responsible for situations like in Garbu, the one in the far north, are brought to book. Then there is no reason why somebody will sit in the diaspora and think that he can walk away with all what he has said and done. So we are all talking about Mr. Biya because he gives orders, and we also know that there are people sitting in the diaspora giving orders to those Amber boys to go and kill Baby Mata, or not Baby Mata, Baby Blanche, Florence Ayafo, who they pretended that they arrested Florence Ayafo, but at the same time they came and said that they exiled those who were responsible for the decapitation of Florence Ayafo. So think the world doesn't work like that. The world is a global space, and everybody at some time will be responsible for what he did, said, and know.
In less than 72 hours, about 8 elements of the National Armed Forces have been brought down,
yes,
by bullets, and about 3 civilians killed. But focusing more on the elements of the National Armed Forces who have been killed in less than 72 hours, about 8 of them, and another explosive was discovered in the town of Kumba by Security and Defense Forces. If you were to make projections into the future of this crisis, what will you say about the evolution of the crisis with regards to what government is doing so far to bring down the tensions?
Babila, you see, this is not the first time that I am talking about the planting of explosives left and right, because confronting the military physically is not going to, the Ambazonians are not able to do that. But what they would do, they would multiply such actions even in civilian areas. Remember a certain Don Emmanuel, who calls himself Capo Daniel, claimed responsibility for planting bombs at the food market in Bamenda, for planting bombs in a transport, urban transport vehicle that exploded somewhere between Santa and Buddha. So those actions would come in. These are actions that are meant to create awareness, to tell the people that they are still alive and that they should come and negotiate with them. The theory of these Ambazonians who are sitting here is not that they are fighting for independence. They said they want to make the territory ungovernable until the government will come to the table and sit to talk with them, people who are Americans, people who are French, people who are British, people who are Germans. That is what they have in their mind, and they don't hide it. You just need to listen to them and you will see the way they act and what they say, because they are saying that they are going to even attack schools. Somebody like Eric Tato goes on air and tells you that they will attack schools. some other guy who sits in Denmark, who's called Prince Jakal, he comes on air and tells you that they should make the territory so hot that the government will have to come and talk to them. But as a government, the Cameroon government is too slow in its reaction, because I think I have gathered intelligence that most of these things have been transmitted to them, but they are slow to react because there are people in the government who are actually in positions to react, but they don't want to react, because when there is a situation like this, there are many people who benefit from it. They get stipends for missions, they get stipends, retro commissions from buying arms, and so on and so forth. And you also want to understand that there is a certain complicity on the field with the military. The role of the military is preemptive. It is not to go and stand on the streets to be controlling vehicles. No, that's the job of the police. Ask yourself why the military are on the streets to be controlling police, whereas if they were preemptive, they would have gotten intelligence that people had gone to Pakistan, got trained, and came back, and they would have known when and where they were going to operate. All this information is out there, but as somebody who is not part of that system, I don't want to get myself involved in what they are doing and what they are not doing. So the days ahead, you will see such actions even in civilians agglomeration multiply themselves, but there is a way to contain that situation, and that they should really actually get into their books and study the way how these bombs are made, where they are brought in, and how they are brought in, where they get gunpowder to produce these bombs. And if those arenas are stopped, then you will not see such actions happening anywhere in Cameroon anytime again.
We're going to take interviews of the week, and when we come back, we will take a look at what France can do to help Cameroon out of the trouble. What is in the light of the United States Congress recent outing accusing France of doing nothing. Stay with us.
At about 5:58 a.m. at the control post bordering matters in Santa subdivision with the West region, our defense forces were attacked, probably by separatist fighters, and the result is that we lost 3 gendarmes, one of whom died in the hospital, as well as 1 policeman and 2 civilians, 1 driver, amongst which were 1 driver, that was the driver of the petrol tanker, as well as his aide. At this moment we have 2 policemen who are receiving treatment, wounded, at the regional hospital, as well as other gendarmes.
This is a testimony that they are there to secure the whole population. They should continue to collaborate with them, because they are there for them, and they will be permanently available for them. Just to keep informed the forces of law and order, and they are going to react. Today you are now happy, you are enjoying. You remember what happened in Bangui 2 days ago. It was through this kind of activity. But here in town, they try their best and have this result today. Once more, congratulations to all those forces of law and order, and also the population who are permanently collaborating with them. We continue to use this opportunity to advise the whole population to effectively collaborate, because security is not only for us, forces of law and order, and the authority, but themselves have to play their own games.
Prefecture of Fundi has been vacant for quite some time, and it has to take up with a lot of steam to make sure that things get working, because with the absence of the former who died, things have not been working the way we wanted it to be. So we have brought a young, dynamic somebody who will be able to bring in some new ways of doing things, so that things can go ahead. So I am calling on him to be sure that the first thing he has to tackle is the cleanliness of the town and the urban disorder, especially as we are going to enter the African competitions in the few days to come. And secondly, he has to be sure that there is security in the town, that people are sure that when they sleep, they'll be able to get up in the morning without thieves harassing them.
The bishops of the Bamenda Ecclesiastical Province, together with the National Episcopal Conference, we have all been working together. I want to use this opportunity to thank each and everybody for all the support and assistance that I have received, and at the same time to call on each and every one of them to continue to pray for me and to give me the support that I need so that together we continue to carry on with the work of evangelization and catechesis in the diocese. The Bishop Emeritus, Emmanuel Bush, has been very, very supportive, and he is present in the diocese. I know he will continue to support me so that we continue to serve the people of God.
You're welcome back. PADDY ASANGA, in your opinion, is there anything that France can do to help Cameroon out of these troubled waters?
Well, you know, Cameroon, France has a vital role to play as far as the current context of Cameroon is concerned. And when you look at the history between France and Cameroon and the two presidents that we have had in Cameroon, you would understand that they were puppets that were picked up by France and put at the helm of the nation. The difference between the Ahidjo and Biya is that Ahidjo was more nationalist, and Ahidjo came to realize himself. But Biya has told you people that he, at one time, he was the best student of France, and when he organized the national dialogue, he never went to tour Cameroon to give Cameroonians an account of what had happened, but he said, je suis allé en France rendre compte à Macron. And he also, in that same situation, in that same light, he told you that there was a project of assimilation. I don't think that they wanted to assimilate the Anglophone Cameroonians to become all Ngembas, or to be speaking Mogamo, or how would you want to call it, or Lamso, or how the Bali language. So they want to assimilate Cameroonians to become all Cameroon to become French. So France has a very important role to play if they want this thing to end. But the truth is that as a benefactor or as a beneficiary of the current system, they would rather let Mr. Biya do what he's doing with Cameroonians than to have somebody who would come in and maybe take away the amount of power, the power of decree that Mr. Biya has. You want to understand that Mr. Biya creates and decrees people. A certain minister in Mr. Biya's cabinet told you that nous sommes tous les créatures de Monsieur Biya. Nous sommes tous les créatures du Créateur. So that is the dynamics. That is how Mr. Biya and his ministers, ex-ministers, whether they are in positions or not, that is the way they think. So what France is doing now is looking for the credible alternative. But Cameroonians still have a chance to take their destinies into their hands and stop taking injunctions from France.
How can they do that? Or what is expected of the common man and, of course, those who are in power?
Listen, Babila, we are a country with a very, very rich history, and we have to use our history to educate ourselves and move forward. At a certain point in our history, all Cameroonians were Union du Population, that is UPC, that was banned. And in the early 90s, all Cameroonians under the Union for Change took France by surprise. And that is where France started doing what they are doing right now. And at that time, they voted for an Anglophone. And what was the slogan at that time? The slogan was to boycott all French products. The slogan was to get into a federal system, which was going to respect our cultural diversity. And the slogan was also to do away with institutions like ENAM. ENAM is a post-colonial institution, and the most of the people who are creating problems in Cameroon today are those who are graduating from ENAM. Why should students who have the same level of education, one is paid because he is going to be a civil servant for studying, and after he studies, he pays to get into that institution, he is paid when he is that institution, and when he gets into that institution, he comes back and starts racketeering people because he bribed somebody to get into that institution. These are institutions that were legated to us by colonial France, or the trustee France, let's call it what you want to call it. So we are at a point now where Cameroonians should take their destiny into their hands and use this critical mass instead of dividing ourselves, but denounce the common enemy, which is the post-colonial regime that has been legated to us by France. People are telling us today that Mr. Biya is not going to renew the sacred accords with the French, but it is not true. Let Mr. Biya come out and show us documents that clearly state that those accords have not been renewed, because I read somewhere another document where they were reviewing the accords, and the military accords with the French is still there. You know, Mr. Babila, one thing we have to know is that if you are a president of a nation, your protectorate should be the people and not a foreign power, and not even the military, because when the people will rise up, the military will have no force. Imagine that Cameroon doesn't have 1 million armed forces. They don't. But we have 23 million people. And if 3 million out of these 23 million people rise up someday and say, okay, we are taking our collective destiny into our hand, I don't think that France will have anything to say. I don't think that Jacobins like Atanganji Paul, Ngole, Mr. Biya, and all those he have created and infiltrated the opposition in it would have something to say. They will not withstand that. So that is how Cameroonians can take their destinies into their hands, Babila.
All right, PADDY ASANGA, we're going to wrap up this edition of the program with the latest information streaming into our studio from the far north region of the country, saying that at least 11 persons have been killed in the last Boko Haram attack in the locality of Mosogo in the Mayo-Chanaga division. In your opinion, how can these sporadic incursions of Boko Haram militants who continue killing people in that part of the country be brought to an end?
You see, Babila, it has to do with education. Go and look at the schools and the way, the conditions under which people are going to schools in this far north region. It doesn't encourage anybody to go to school. Education, they say education is the key, but Jacobins, they have taken the lock, and they don't want to give, they don't want to open it for our people to get educated and know where the stakes are. And I listened to one Nigerian activist accusing France and saying that France is responsible for Boko Haram and so on and so forth. Whether it is true or not, but I also know that France has more vested interests in Nigeria in terms of investment and petroleum exploitation than Cameroon. And some other intellectuals are saying that France is responsible for what is happening in the far north region of Cameroon, because they want to come in and renegotiate and impose another person who would replace Biya. So they are looking for some kind of person. So their goal is to destabilize the northwest, the far north region, the east region that is the boundary between Cameroon and Central Africa, and now they are trying to get of the northwest and southwest region. True or not, I don't know. But if you want to stop this incursion, then our security forces should go to work.
Especially the use of suicide bombers. The use of suicide bombers.
Yes, but Babila, you know, when you cannot explode a bomb when that bomb doesn't contain gunpowder. Where do they get this gunpowder from, and how do they bring in gunpowder into the country and get people prepared and so on? So the traffication of gunpowder can be controlled. Please don't ask me how it can be controlled, but that one you can control it, and there are mechanisms in today's world that you can make sure that gunpowder is controlled, where in the northwest or in the far north, the north, and then the east region, and then you talk about the northwest and southwest region. That if you control the traffication of gunpowder in and out of Cameroon, then you would stop Boko Haram and you would stop any other bomb attacks that will be happening in Cameroon. And the government knows how to do it, but it is not that they have bad faith, because it is divided. You know, there are some people in the government who actually think that this thing should come to an end, and they are working tirelessly to bring it to an end, but there are other people who are benefiting from it, and they don't want it to come to an end. And those people in the government who want it to come to an end, we are talking to them, and we are giving them ways to make sure that life should be preserved. I will not hide it from you. Mr. John Gute, who is of the CPDM party that I don't like, but as a person, I think he is doing a very, very great job, and he has listening ears. And you have on the other camp, you have some other Anglophones in the government who wants to sabotage his good work, because they think that maybe it's the end of the regime. They have to make as much money for themselves and their families as they can before, if the regime change comes, they would become obsolete, and they would have done everything and protected their children and their hegemony. So that's the situation that we have in our country, and a regime is almost as divided as those of us who want peace to come to Cameroon, or who want change in Cameroon.
PADDY ASANGA, Cameroonian civil society activist, joining us from Hamburg in Germany. Thank you for your time, PADDY.
Thank you, Babila, and I want to congratulate you and the Equinoxe family for what you are doing. I know that you people are in so much difficulties. There are some people who are saying that you should be, your media should be locked up, but if they want to shut up Equinoxe, then there is a certain media where people said people should be dératisés and so on and so forth. I think that journalist is no more there. That should be the first media to be locked up or to be shut off, not Equinoxe Television. Thank you, Babila, and congratulations. Happy New Year.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today.